$1.5 billion. 482,460 books. This is the largest copyright settlement in United States history. Bigger than any music case, bigger than any film case, bigger than anything before it. But the actual reason Anthropic got hit this hard isn't what most headlines say. It wasn't that their AI read these books. It was how the books ended up on Anthropic's servers in the first place. Here's why this case matters far beyond one company. Frontier AI models are trained on trillions of words, books, articles, code, transcripts, images. That data has to come from somewhere, and acquiring it legally, at the scale modern AI requires, is slow and expensive. So the question the entire industry has been quietly sitting on is this. When you need that much text, and licensing all of it the right way would take years, what do you actually do? Anthropic's answer, revealed through litigation, gives us the clearest look yet at how one frontier lab actually solved that problem. And it just put a very literal price on the answer. This isn't the first time a fast-growing tech industry got rich off content it didn't pay for. In the early 2000s, Napster let millions of people download music for free, arguing it was just indexing files, not stealing them. The courts disagreed, Napster was shut down, and the music industry spent the next decade rebuilding around licensed platforms like Spotify. AI training data is following a strikingly similar arc: mass, unlicensed use first, legal reckoning second, and licensing infrastructure showing up only after the lawsuits force it. The difference this time, the checks are bigger, and they're just getting started. The case started in August 2024. 3 authors, thriller writer Andrea Bartz, nonfiction writer Charles Graeber, author of The Good Nurse, and Kirk Wallace Johnson, author of The Feather Thief, sued Anthropic, alleging the company had copied their books without permission or payment to train Claude. On its own, that sounds like every AI lawsuit filed since 2023. What made this one different was what discovery actually uncovered. Between 2021 and 2022, Anthropic downloaded more than 7 million books from 2 piracy sites, Library Genesis, known as LibGen, and Pirate Library Mirror, not to train one model and delete them afterward. Court records, uncovered during discovery, show Anthropic kept the files, building what the judge later described as a permanent general-purpose internal library, the kind of collection a legitimate publisher would normally need a licensing deal to build. None of this became public because Anthropic disclosed it. It became public because 3 authors sued, and the lawsuit forced the company's own internal records into daylight. In June 2025, Judge William Alsup ruled on part of the case, and it actually went in Anthropic's favor. Training an AI model on books, he ruled, was fair use, calling it, quote, exceedingly transformative. If a company legally owns a book, turning it into training data for an AI is protected. That ruling alone was a massive win for the entire AI industry, Anthropic included. But Alsup drew a hard line right next to that ruling. Downloading millions of books from pirate sites to build a permanent library was a different question entirely, and he denied Anthropic's request to dismiss that part of the case. He rejected the company's research defense outright. Quote, "You can't just bless yourself by saying I have a research purpose and therefore go and take any textbook you want." That piracy claim was headed to trial. Here's the scale, in one look. 7 million books downloaded. 482,460 of them named in the final settlement. 92.77% of copyright holders filed a claim, roughly $3,000 per book. $1.5 billion total. So is $1.5 billion actually a lot of money to Anthropic? By early 2026, the company had raised funding at a valuation north of $380 billion. At that scale, $1.5 billion is a little under 0.5% of the company's valuation. Real money to any individual author receiving a check, but a rounding error against what investors think Anthropic is ultimately worth. That's the uncomfortable math sitting underneath every one of these settlements. The penalty for getting caught is real, but it's still smaller than the advantage of getting to train on the data first. Facing trial, Anthropic settled instead. In September 2025, the company agreed to pay $1.5 billion, paid out in stages through 2027, to the class of authors and publishers whose books came from those pirated libraries. Critically, the settlement doesn't give Anthropic permission to use these books going forward. It resolves what already happened. It grants nothing for what comes next. As part of the deal, Anthropic is required to destroy the pirated files entirely, the original downloaded copies, and anything derived from them, within 30 days of final judgment. The company can still legally scan and use books it purchased outright. It just can't keep the ones it took from pirate libraries in the first place. Not everyone calls this a clean victory for authors. The settlement resolved a claim. It didn't answer the underlying question. It sets no binding legal precedent that the next author suing a different AI company can point to in court. Some legal commentators called it, bluntly, a very expensive speeding ticket. Real money changes hands, but there's still no ruling that training AI on unlicensed text is illegal in general. The Authors Guild called it a historic win regardless. The first-time writers, not just publishers, got paid directly for this kind of use. And here's proof the outcome isn't universal. Meta faced a nearly identical accusation over the same pirated libraries. Internal messages that surfaced in discovery allege Mark Zuckerberg personally approved using LibGen despite Meta's own legal team flagging the risk beforehand. But in a separate ruling that same month, a different judge, using a narrower legal theory focused specifically on market harm, sided with Meta, finding the authors hadn't proven that training on their specific books hurt sales of those books. Same pirated libraries, same year. Two completely different legal outcomes because the two cases were decided on different legal theories, not because one company did something fundamentally different from the other. The New York Times is fighting a similar battle with OpenAI and Microsoft, but over news articles instead of books, and the case is far from settled. A judge already rejected OpenAI's attempt to get the case thrown out, ruling the Times had plausibly shown that ChatGPT's output could compete directly with its journalism. The case is now in discovery, and as of mid-2026 the Times and other publishers are accusing OpenAI of withholding evidence, asking a federal judge to sanction the company. Where Anthropic chose to settle, OpenAI is choosing to fight. A trial is expected in late 2026 or early 2027. Two more cases show just how unsettled this all still is. Getty Images sued Stability AI in the UK over millions of licensed photos, and lost. Getty abandoned its core training data claims before the case even finished, and a UK judge ruled Stability hadn't committed the infringement Getty alleged. But Thomson Reuters sued Ross Intelligence over copying Westlaw's legal research data to train a competing legal AI, and won. It's the first final court judgment anywhere in this space, and it found training on that data was not fair use at all. 4 major lawsuits, 4 different results. Here's the number that actually matters going forward. $3,000. Not because a court ruled it's the legal price of a pirated book used to train an AI, no court did. But because it's now the number every future negotiation, lawsuit, and licensing deal will get measured against. Unsurprisingly, the entire industry is now racing toward licensing deals instead of legal risk. OpenAI and Amazon have both signed direct content deals with publishers. Anthropic, notably, still has close to none. It's defined right now by the size of the check it wrote for the past, not by any deal for the future. For the actual authors involved, this is real money finally landing, roughly $3,000 per book, split according to individual publishing contracts, paid out in stages over the next 2 years. It's the first time in the entire AI boom that individual writers, not just publishers or platforms, received a direct payout for their work being used without permission. For many mid-list authors, a few $1,000s per book is a meaningful check. It is also, unmistakably, far less than the value that data delivered to a company now worth hundreds of billions. For AI companies, the lesson is narrower than simply don't use copyrighted data. Training itself just got real legal protection, as long as you acquired the material legitimately. The actual lesson is this: how you get the data now matters as much as what you do with it afterward. A research purpose doesn't excuse piracy. Internal decisions made in 2021 can resurface in court years later, once a company is worth enough to be worth suing. And if you build your training pipeline in secret, using pirate libraries, expect the bill to eventually come due, quite literally, with interest. A few honest caveats. This was a settlement, not a trial verdict. Anthropic never admitted piracy was illegal, and no appeals court has weighed in. The $3,000 figure is a negotiated number, not a legally mandated price. Meta's different outcome shows these cases turn on specific facts, not one universal rule. And with the New York Times, Getty, and other cases still unresolved, this legal landscape is still being written in real time. So, what's actually real, and what's still unsettled? What's real? Anthropic paid a genuine $1.5 billion for downloading pirated books. Authors are receiving real payouts, and we had a research purpose, no longer works as a legal shield. What's unsettled? Whether training AI on copyrighted work in general is legal remains an open question, decided case by case. Meta's outcome proves that. This didn't end the AI copyright war, it just set the first real price tag inside it. That's the real story behind the biggest copyright settlement in US history, and why it's a lot more nuanced than Anthropic got caught stealing books. Every source is linked in the description below. If you want more of these breakdowns on the AI stories that actually matter, follow along, there's a lot more of this coming.